Hello to everyone and welcome to the fifth in a series of HE Innovate webinars. The title for this webinar is Policy Approaches to Digital Transformation and Institutional Responses. My name is Rebecca Allenson. I work for Technopolis as part of the HE Innovate team with Zsuzsa Jaworka, and I will be your moderator for this session. HE Innovate is an initiative of the European Commission and the OECD, helping higher education institutions explore their innovative potential. If you are not a subscriber to the HE Innovate News, please do sign up. I would also like to give an announcement from the European Commission, DG Education and Culture, who this morning launched the open public consultation on the Digital Education Action Plan. It will stay open until the 4th of September, and they invite everyone to participate in the consultation, and a link will appear in the chat. Before introducing today's webinar, I have a few housekeeping issues to cover. Today's webinar is being recorded. We welcome your questions and your comments, and there is a live Q&A where you can enter your questions for the speakers at any time. We will have time after the two presentations for a Q&A session, and if you have a particular speaker in mind, please feel free to indicate by adding their name. We will also have a bit more time at the end for additional questions. There is also a comment section to the right of your screen, and feel free to add comments at any time. I would now like to introduce our speakers today. First, we're delighted to have Dr. Laura Shinora-Szabo. Laura is Head of Department for Higher Education Strategy and Institutional Development in the Ministry of Innovation and Technology, Budapest. Laura is responsible for developing policy field strategic interventions and development programs, as well as developing the action plans for higher education strategy and assuring strategic synergies in the policy field. Her research field is efficiency measurement, and she teaches management and communication in higher education. Laura is joined by Christina Lennart. Christina is Head of Education Management and Talent Support Department of ELTA. Since 2015, Christina has worked at Eötvös-Loránd University. Christina has expertise in coordinating and promoting the use of digital technologies and innovative teaching methods, and she is continuously seeking possibilities of supporting talented students with skills development programs and financial tools. Her department assists in the work of the Talent Management Fund of ELTA. She contributes as a coordinator of ELTA in Charm European University. She also participates in several projects as the delegate of the university focused on credit recognition, internationalization, dropout in higher education, and talent support. We then move to Ireland to Dr. Ruairí Nevin. Ruairí has 30 years of experience working in higher education, and during his career, he has been appointed to numerous senior management roles in higher education institutes, including being appointed as the president of 2 institutes of technology in Ireland. He is currently employed as a senior advisor on higher education with the Irish Higher Education Authority and advises on higher education policy and program development activities in areas including skills, engagement, entrepreneurship, digital transformation, system performance, and financial systems. Ruairí is also very active in international collaborative activities and is currently a member of the OECD's group of national experts on higher education, the Portuguese government's Coordinating Council for Science Research and Higher Education, member of the Steering Committee of the Regional University Network of Europe, and member of the EU HE Innovates Expert Group. Ruairí is joined by Dr. Terry Maguire, an Irish educator and senior manager who has pioneered flexible and blended approaches to teaching and learning in Ireland and Scotland. She is committed to lifelong learning and student partnership. Terry has led the development of Ireland's National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education since its inception in 2013. The National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education is the national body responsible for leading and advising on the enhancement of teaching and learning and is regarded as an essential component of the national level infrastructure for higher education in Ireland. The vision is to develop a valued and informed teaching and learning culture in Irish higher education. Now, both Hungary and Ireland have also been involved in the HE Innovate country reviews, working with the European Commission and the OECD to look more deeply at certain aspects of their systems and to provide recommendations for the future. I will now hand over to Laura and Christina.
Okay, thank you. Good evening for everybody. Just a moment, I share my screen. Okay, welcome. My name is Christina Lénárt and I work at Eötvös Loránd University, Budapest. Today, I want to tell you about our practice before COVID-19 and show you the measures we did to digitalize our education. In Eötvös Loránd University, the infrastructure for online learning was decentralized. There were 3 LMS systems in use before March of 2020, the open source version of Moodle and Canvas and CoSpace. We used Canvas and Moodle as a connected system with Neptune Student Information System via a secure server that could authenticate the student login. The other Canvas system we used was open for everyone after logging with an email address, and this was a MOOC platform of the university, which we were titling to reach out for prospective students, teachers, and those who were interested in lifelong learning. In the Education Directorate, our office, the Education Development and Talent Support Department, is responsible for the development on this field, for training teachers and supporting them methodologically and technically. To support them, we organize LMS training, speech and rhetorical training courses, and methodology consultations. Moreover, we organize training courses for students as well. Using an online platform is new territory for most of our teachers. Because of that, we support them with financial rewards, and we are working on a new system for the recognition of innovative teachers. Our department supports them with counseling, troubleshooting via email, and personal consultations. The challenges we needed to face were the following. Despite our efforts, teachers had very few and unevenly distributed digital skills to be used. And because distance learning is not just e-learning, the objective was to find an appropriate substitute for face-to-face teaching and learning, which can support the functionally equivalent student experience. And teachers and students needed more support than among normal circumstances due to the increased stress level induced by the epidemics. All in all, unknown digital techniques had to be implemented together with an increased sensibility towards the students and fellow colleagues. Some of the lessons learned might be sustainable. Critical judgment is needed to properly identify those elements of distance learning which are useful and doable among normal circumstances. Based on experiences from the teaching staff, distance learning is not an exhaustive replacement of face-to-face teaching and learning experience. Main goals were to manage the use of the many different online platforms, to provide support for teachers and students, and to maintain the proper administration system during the current time. To give rapid but established solutions for the challenges, a new organizational unit, YOCT, was formed, which was responsible for institutional regulations regarding the policies. The rector announced a special break for FES till 15th of March and an early spring break until 22nd of March, and teachers could develop their online educational materials within this period. However, we had more than one LMS system. We needed a collaboration platform, which was affordable for the institution and accessible for all ELTE citizens, not just for the lecturers, teachers, but the students and administrative staff as well. So Microsoft Teams was chosen. The integration with Neptune Student Information System was a success. Teachers now can choose between Moodle Canvas, and Teams platforms, depending on which one fit better to their curriculum. Within 24 hours, the course is created automatically in the platform. The increasing use of online platforms also put an increased need for support towards our office. The lending hand of our e-learning experts, super user teachers from the faculties, was very helpful, aiming to help the colleagues in deeper methodological questions. All educational units updated their existing teaching materials and created new ones in the digital environment for distance learning. From 23rd of March, distance learning started at ELTE. It was not easy, but there has been some success. In the first weeks of launch, 44% of courses had a digital version. There were nearly 1,000 video conferences daily, and more than 12,000 ELTE citizens were collaborating in the online environment. And at the end of the semester, we can see now that less than 1% of the courses were cancelled. We have more than 20,000 courses, so this means 200 courses which can be organized until the end of August to complete the curriculum. And 10,000 users are collaborating daily in our platforms, and on average there are 800 video conferences daily, and the thesis submission became available using our student information system. Our plans for the next month, we are in the examination period, so we hope to manage final and oral examinations online and PhD thesis defenses online successfully. This summer we are developing Panopto system in all our campuses for broadcasting and capturing lectures. Our department needs to be prepared with some user manuals and training to support our teachers. And we'd like to provide more support by technical staff and instructional designers for our teachers. And we plan to organize trainings for more people, not just for the teachers, but to the administrative staff as well. And we'd like to maintain more efficient student support in the distance and online learning, in the use of LMS systems, but some kind of online mentoring as well. And we would like to develop existing LMS systems based on the suggestions of our teachers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, Christina. And it's an impressive speed at which you managed to get all of these courses online, and of course the ongoing issues of upskilling staff and students, and of course not just the teaching staff, but also the administration staff. So I'm now going to share my screen. Okay, right, so I'll now hand over to Laura then to talk about the sectoral measures and future interventions. Thank you.
So thank you very much, and don't worry about the technical glitches. I'm running a webinar series myself, so I know what can happen. If we go to the first slide, Hungary was one of the first countries on which OECD ran HE Innovate Country Report. That time, multimedia was not very often used in self-learning exercises. If we go to the next slide, then everything changed on the 11th of March 2020. The government declared a state of emergency in Hungary. Students were prohibited from entering higher education institutions until revoked, but during the curfew, higher education institutions had to ensure the continuity of education. On the request of the policy field, higher education institutions developed action plans by the 16th of March to ensure continuous distance learning. Let's go to the next slide. So very quickly, on the 18th of March, after analyzing and overviewing the action plans, the sector came out with the sectoral recommendation for the organization of higher education training in emergencies. We recommended on general management provisions for the operation of the Senate and committees, on the organization of distance teaching, and on available applications and tools. Let's go to the next slide. Just in a week, on the 25th of March, we developed a survey to get a picture of the problems higher education institutions are facing during the pandemic. The questions focused on ICT infrastructure, electronic curriculum, human resources, and organizing trainings, among others. Next slide, please. Based on the response, it can be stated that the vast majority of trainings were completed, only 2% failed. The reasons for failed trainings were lack of computer equipment, lack of adequate computing skills of teachers, and inadequate internet bandwidth. Next slide, please. Connected to the higher education action plans, we thought that it would be a good idea to collect the good institutional practices on distance education. So we prepared a compilation on the good practices. We provided this collection to the institutions and higher education stakeholders on the 30th of April in 2020. Next slide, please. Following the compilation of good practices, there's been a webinar series with different topics connected to higher education distance learning experiences. We are having dialogue with 18 higher education institutions, student unions, and national higher education organizations. Next slide. Meanwhile, we also prepared our exit strategy. The general guidelines of the strategy are that it gradually brings education and institutional management back into the order of operation after the end of emergency. And we would like to ensure the most optimal conditions for all actors in the sector. We are planning to start the academic year in September 2020, and due to a recent amendment in our law, now it's possible to start the new academic year online as well. Next slide, please. Hungary has won expert support within the framework of Structural Reform Support Program to facilitate the digital transformation of Hungarian higher education. The project will be implemented in close cooperation of the European Commission, DG Regio, OECD, and Hungary, our policy field. We will be provided with strategic digital interventions for the new action plan of our strategy and a set of indicators assessing the digital readiness of higher education institutions. I'm very excited about this project because I'm really very much interested in assessing efficiency, as you mentioned in my introduction. And the last slide. So I think a lot about distance education and the emergency situation. And I realized that it has brought for most of us a finally it happened experience. And it also became obvious that personal contact cannot be left out in education. And this was all strengthened by the webinar series and my partners in the webinar series. A lot of institutions have started to build brands upon their distance learning innovations. The period has coined a couple of new terms, such as platform chaos, complete onlining, and hybrid education. And it's very interesting to me that distance education is actually built on paradoxes. It was a compulsion, but it turned out to be fun. It was our plan, but it became a reality. It distanced us, but at the same time, it brought us closer to each other. And what seemed to be a crisis, it became an opportunity to move to the next level of digital education. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much for that, Laura. And it sounds like a really interesting time of agile change for institutions. And of course, also having this moment of experimentation is really, really important, and we can learn an awful lot from it. Just to start up while I'm getting my screen back to normal, There's a question for Christina on the chat about asking whether you've had a student satisfaction survey of the students around online education.
We are in the middle of that. So yeah, we are making a questionnaire, and in this summer we'll ask them about their experiment.
And just to add up, that also our national student union is running a survey on the students' satisfaction, and we have the preliminary data, and most of them are satisfied in Hungary.
And so do you think, for the two of you, how have you used this experience so far that you've collected during the crisis, and what do you think will be how the future will be affected for you?
We are planning to ask our teachers as well, and they have first-hand experiences because they discuss this with their students as well, how they felt about all these themes, kind of classes, and after that we collect all this data, and then we are planning to make new trainings for our teachers and new methodological solutions to give them.
And do you think that there are particular segments of the student or the lecturer community or the admin community that have struggled more than others? And how do you identify and tackle that? And also, do you think that's recognised at policy level?
Wow, this is a question.
Now I can help out from the policy.
From the policy level, I can answer that yes, it was recognized by us. We had a survey, we ran a survey on inclusive distance education. And so it turned out that obviously it made some, it wasn't a success for everyone, distance education in Hungary, and some students needed support. But we had a lot of programs before COVID-19. So most of the institutions were well prepared for the situation, and we had a lot of cooperation among the institutions and the policy field, and so no one was left behind, as far as I know. And the next step for us, if I can answer the previous question as well, is absolutely the strategic project with the OECD and the Commission, and developing the new action plan. And what I believe that what we're doing now is not quality distance education. It was a warm-up, and we would like to find the new framework for that, the quality framework for digital education.
Yeah. So a lot of work to do then in the future. Well, thank you both Laura and Christina for your presentations. I'm now going to hand over to Rory and Terry, who will give some insights into the policy approaches being taken in Ireland, particularly in light of COVID-19. And as a reminder, please feel free to post your questions to us during the presentations for us to follow up at the end.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Rory Nevin. I work for the HEA. The HEA is the body responsible for funding, governance, and indeed setting policy within the Irish higher education system. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the digital transformation agenda in the Irish higher education system, both pre and post-COVID, with a view to give you an idea of how our thinking is going to change going forward. So moving on to the second slide, and I'm not going to attempt to go to this slide in full. The purpose of this slide is more or less to tell you what we see as the main benefit of the digital transformation agenda, and that is to improve if you like, student and stakeholder performance through the leveraging of technology and data. And for those of you who maybe are starting out in this process, I'd recommend you check out EduCause, and their website is given on the slide there. They do provide some very valuable information in relation to digital transformation activities and the promotion of information technology in terms of learning. For us, where are we at pre-COVID-19 in terms of our policy development activities? Well, we had a key initiative in our own strategic plan in the HEA, which was to develop a digital transformation framework. In actual fact, within the HE Innovate review performed by our colleagues in the OECD and the European Commission, like Hungary, we also had a recommendation to engage in this type of process. We had gone through the process of engaging with our stakeholders on their views in relation to current digital strategies and their plans to deploy further technologies and what approach we should develop in producing the digital transformation framework. Just to say, Ireland, in terms of digital activities and teaching and learning activities, is probably well advanced, but our actual policy positions weren't as well spelled out as other countries in the European Union. Excuse me. And I suppose we had commenced the process for the creation of a digital transformation framework, which included clear timelines, responsible agencies, and areas of action. And here are our key stakeholders, and I don't want to go through them all, but obviously you can see the education providers. I do want to focus in on two very important ones on the bottom of the page. HEAnet, who are our NREN, and we hope will be the cornerstone in terms of delivering on the technology requirements of our digital transformation framework, and our Teaching and Learning Forum, who we believe will be absolutely key in developing the teaching and learning practices required to ensure the development of a digital transformation capacity in the higher education system. And that's why Terry will be talking today, and I'm sure she will give you a very informative briefing on what they do. So when we were developing the new strategy, obviously in our consultation process, we did discover some interesting things, which I think people should take on board if they're developing their own digital transformation strategies or frameworks. And these were, first of all, that there needs to be great collaboration, not just in the education system, but also across multiple departments, because higher education activities can be influenced not just by education departments, but also by like the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health. There needs to be a clear vision in terms of what's to be created via consultation. The other comment to say is that digital transformation can mean different things to different people and different stakeholders. So you need a clear set of data definitions and a common language that people can understand. You need to understand the state of play in terms of the capacity of providers and other stakeholders. And I suppose we did discover that obviously there needed to be significant investment. Kelsey-Freeze, that's always the way, and there would need to be significant support provided in terms of additional support for students and indeed staff going forward in order for this to be successful. But we're well on the way, we're getting there, and then this is where we wanted to get to. I suppose this is the Microsoft, I've stolen this from Microsoft. This is their view of what they would call the ideal education digital transformation framework, which has three key pillars: student success and life cycle, teaching, learning, research, and connected campus. And the idea being, as much as possible, to enable our higher education institutions to get to the state of organization in relation to the digital agenda. But then COVID-19 hit and our world stopped and changed, and we ended up, I suppose, ceasing work on the formulation of our digital transformation framework. However, all of our HE activity, which could, went online. New work practices and learning approaches were introduced almost overnight, and we had a very positive level of engagement sector-wide in this process. Unfortunately, we haven't as yet developed what I would say a clear understanding of the impact on working arrangements and indeed the student's experience is, and that is the next phase in our work. And we would hope maybe through our own graduate surveys that we conduct every year to maybe include specifically in this year a reference to the impact of COVID-19 on the learning process. We clearly understand there will be a greater emphasis and need for blended learning approaches going forward, and I suppose the approach to development of our transformation framework will change quite significantly. And in what way will that happen? Well, first of all, we will need to include the lessons learned from the impact. We will need to have a commitment to significant investment, and this has actually happened within our own budget. Suppose the budget this year we have put in our additional funding to cover this area. But the other comment to make is that COVID-19 won't just impact on, I suppose, the interaction in relation to the digital agenda, but it will also impact on other education relevant areas, such as lifelong learning. In Ireland, our lifelong learning participation rates are probably lower than other European countries, and we would see that there was a positive coming from the COVID-19 intervention in that people did take on board online digital strategies. So maybe this will help us improve lifelong learning participation. Also, work-based learning, reskilling and upskilling activities could be more suited to an online delivery approach. And then other issues we had to take on board, obviously, is internationalisation and an approach to blended mobility opportunities, and particularly in the context of Erasmus Plus programmes and indeed the emerging European university initiatives. And then the last thing that we have to consider, obviously, is what is the impact of COVID-19 in terms of policy development activities in the areas of work practices and public service contracts. And what we've seen actually is with our own new programme for government, which we hope will be delivered on this month, that certainly there is a move towards ensuring that staff are more engaged in online work practices and indeed engaged in the use of digital transformation activities, platforms and so on. But that's just a quick summary of where we're at, because actually I really do want to hand over to Terry, who will give you a more impactful, I think, presentation on what they do in relation to digital transformation agenda and how they assist and help higher education institutions in that space. So thank you very much, Rebecca, for your time.
Thank you very much. So just while we're waiting for Terry's presentation to come up, I think this is a really interesting in relation to the effect that it's going to have on other aspects of education, educational theory as well. And I think that segues very well into Terry. So do you have, can you unshare your screen now, Rory? That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. And as Becky said in the introduction, the National Forum in Ireland is the body responsible for leading and advising on the enhancement of teaching and learning. And our strategy, or our whole vision, is around trying to develop a valued teaching and learning culture in higher education. But we know that we can't do that on our own. So we work very much across some of the stakeholders that Rory spoke about in his presentation. We work with the students of Ireland, we work with our quality people, we work with our policy department, we work with the Higher Education Authority, and also we work with the representative association of the different kinds of institutions that exist in Ireland. But most importantly, we work with staff on the ground, we work with students on the ground in terms of shaping a way forward. And what we do, so we don't take decisions lightly, we don't like anecdotal evidence, so we base our work on evidence of both research and practice. We have a focus on impact and how we make impact, but what lessons we learn from that, as much as we think about being accountable for what we do. We work with policy partners and institutions to ensure that the policy informs practice and practice informs the policy. We think it's very important that if policymakers are making policies for our sector, that we take the time to inform them and to work with them to ensure they understand the issues that exist in the sector, but from the sectoral perspective. We make sure we're inclusive of all institutional types. So the remit of the National Forum extends universities, institutes of technologies, and private colleges. We see us working for all students across higher education. Our work is based in consultation. We build ownership, we build consensus, we encourage collaboration. And like today, we think sharing practice internationally, learning from international experience is really important. So we like to build very strong connections internationally to learn from their experience and to share ours. We're stronger together, we're smarter together. And we four strategic priorities and professional development, teaching, learning, and digital world. We see the disciplines within our institutions as a key unit of change, but all of these have student success at their core. And all sometimes in our strategy, they look like they're dealt with individually. They're all linked together and they inform each other. So one of the ways, I suppose, to explain a good way to see our work in action is to see the work we've done around taking an evidence-based approach to digital transformation. So when we were set up, the first thing we were doing was we worked with the sector to develop a roadmap. But when we started, nobody knew where the sector was at. So we had to find out, where is the sector at? You can't have a roadmap unless you know where your starting point is. So we worked with the sector and agreed a roadmap for building digital capacity. We worked with, we interviewed senior management and leaders. We looked at the technological infrastructure across the sector. We looked at what really constitutes an enabling digital policy. When we discussed that with the sector, we had conversations within institutions and got a national understanding around that. And we were proactive in that. One of our initiatives was to help our institutions who were being blinded by those that were providing software, lovely software packages with lovely graphs that was going to apparently tell them everything they needed to know about students from these lovely data graphs. We said, look, no, data isn't a magic wand. It's a tool that we use, and you have to use that in a very strategic and meaningful way. And then last October, we decided, well, we've got so far, so, you know, we need to take stock of where we are. And we ran out the Irish National Digital Experience Survey. And I see this as a very unique data set at a very unique time. This is the data set for every institution in Ireland who are now going through the COVID-19 crisis. And this is a snapshot in October last year. So the first years that are starting in September, they're just finishing up their first year. This is their data. This is the data of all students. We've got 25,500 students and 4,500 staff. And it gave us really good insights in terms of the decision making when the COVID-19 crisis came about. So what we learned was that of our nearly half our students and nearly over 60% of our staff at that time said they would like more digital technologies to be used in their teaching and learning. And 70% of Irish staff had never taught in an online environment. Well, that statistic's gone through the roof now. So COVID-19 came along, and what did we as a forum do? I think that one of the things that we realized was that because we had been working with the sector, because we had been targeting funding and enhancement funding for the last 5 years, because we'd had national conversations around assessment, national conversations about what makes good transitions, about student success, we think the Irish sector was probably better prepared than it would have been if we hadn't been there. Well, we like to think that anyway. We worked with our government agencies, all of the government agencies, all of those stakeholders that we worked with got together collaboratively to share ideas and to try and find solutions to problems that were emerging. And that happened not just sort of short term, but in the medium term, they started to look to the future. And the forum itself, because we're recognised in the sector as being the place to go, we set up opportunities for collaboration, for sharing resources, so that people were able to share good practice that they had developed with all the rest of the colleagues. And that gave ideas to others, and that was really important. And one of the important things that we did was we wanted to capture the lessons that are learned through the shift to online and remote teaching and learning. And I'm delighted to say we're going to have our publication on that out tomorrow. So perhaps we'll be able to share it with the participants, Becky, once it's actually available. But some of the things, and what was interesting when I was listening to my Hungarian colleagues this morning is that some of what you've counted is actually the exact same as what's coming across. The whole sector suddenly had experience of online and remote teaching and learning. My 70% has definitely gone down the tubes. A lot. We understand better the benefits of digital and face-to-face. That experience of only being in an online environment has made people think about what's valuable to what they always did, and vice versa. We had worked on digital policies. They were tested, they were tried. Some were found to be more enabling than others. That's really useful in terms of moving forward. It highlighted barriers to learning that perhaps we hadn't given enough attention to, and certainly for us, we have a big focus on the universal design of learning, and I think that focus needs to continue. It was interesting within our institutions. Teaching and learning is like wallpaper. You never know it's there unless it starts to fray at the edge. But for the first time, we had senior managers, we had politicians, we had policymakers, we had students, we had parents in Ireland talking about teaching and learning. It really brought it into the fore, but that also shone a light on our teaching and learning experts, and actually highlighted the important role that they play. And finally, the importance of people, collaboration, belonging, well-being, all came to the fore. And I think some of those things, and realizing the importance, it was a good stop. So I agree with some of the paradoxes that Laura had highlighted. Some of those were also available in Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Terry. And we have some questions. We have one in the Q&A. So for your transformation framework, did you define some indicators to determine later on whether you've had success? For instance, number of courses offered online, student satisfaction, and which impact indicators do you find useful in this regard?
You know, we've done a lot of work on impact, and if anybody's interested in it, they should go to our website, because we've just spent 6 months researching it. We've got an annotated bibliography there, and for those of you that are busy, we've got 2 pages summarizing some of the key points that we found. But it's a messy busy. Policymakers like numbers, but impact isn't just about numbers.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. It's about much more than that. And no, we didn't start by putting numbers down. We started working with the sector, that we wanted the sector to move forward. And not only that, but we didn't want, I always say, we didn't want, you know, a small part of the sector to move forward, you know, huge amount. We wanted everybody in the sector to move forward a small amount, because that's how change, sustainable change, actually happens. And so we didn't. We first of all got buy-in. We first of all said, well, what would we do? What do you need to think about if you want to build digital capacity? And if you look at our framework isn't so much, it's what it does, it's a resource for institutions that asks the questions of the institution about where they're situating. A little bit about the HE Innovates place, yes. There's some aspects to that. That's the starting point. Now it's different. Now I feel that we've actually moved along. We know the sector has moved along. We've just done an impact analysis, which is available on our website, of some of the work that we've done around the enhancement of teaching and learning, a lot of which was around the digital space. And we know that the sector has moved on. And that's why I think that with the index, the data we now have nationally for index, I think that the next phase is the policies that are going to be developed are going to be really meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you will be able to think about, and that coupled with the fact that we're trying to tell them that impact isn't just about numbers, and we're building understanding around that, I'm hoping the way they think about impact and what they'll see as success will be a little bit different than just numbers. And I'm a maths person, I like the numbers, but
they don't tell you everything, it's true. So we have a question from Laura. So Laura, if you would unmute yourself, then you can ask Terry directly.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask my Irish colleagues that, if I remember correctly, I saw in Ruitri's presentation that they had international collaboration. And in Hungary, we just started to think about talking about the COVID-19 distance education situation in an international context. Can you tell me what you did, what you've done in Ireland?
Okay, so I can tell you. Do you want to take this, or will I take it? Okay, so I'll in terms of our approach, we work with a huge range of international advisors. We work with people that come and work with us and look at our enhancement initiatives and put a sort of an international lens on what we're doing, sharing experience. Particularly in terms of COVID-19, we reached out, I know, to Portugal, for example. We have particular expertise around assessment that one of our colleagues was aware of, and asked us would we actually run out in Portugal a webinar in a series about our understanding of assessment to help those that were dealing with it in Portugal at the time. So most of the work that we've done internationally has been, you know, sharing experience, but more informally at the moment, Laura, than formally. I think the formal piece will come. We've been contributing. I think the European University Association, their Teaching and Learning Forum, has a very good network now, and they've been running out a lot of surveys, and we've been, you know, supporting those. And I think everybody in Ireland, and I probably would imagine in all countries, are just almost just stopping just to see if they can take breath at the moment. So I think a lot of what we'll learn from each other will be about reflecting on it, perhaps in a few weeks' time when we've had the headspace to do that.
Thank you very much. And as you mentioned that you had a lot of international cooperations, have you met a significant difference in the approaches or in the coping mechanisms, or we use pretty much the same tools?
My answer to that is that I think different institutions in different countries are at different places, so their starting points are often different. And I think they perhaps have a different focus. And one of the things I suppose that's most worrying with the forum and us at the moment is that the tools and getting online has actually dominated the discourse rather than the pedagogy. And if the one thing that the forum is going to be focused on in the next while is to actually readdress that balance, so that those that are new to working in the distance environment are not actually, don't think that talking heads is the way to go, that our recorded videos are the way to go, that they have to realize that the importance of these really key interactions and activities that you can do online. And that's where our focus is going to be, to turn that back. And our students have been used to quite an active learning environment, whereas some of my colleagues in some of my other institutions, their students would have been more used to a more traditional passive environment. So that's why I mean that there's different starting points in different countries. Well, certainly in my experience.
And Rory, did you want to add something on the internationalization aspect? If so.
The only comment to make is, I suppose, the internationalization aspect is this, that we have all across Europe become very engaged and involved in the Erasmus Plus program. We've all become very dependent upon our students and our staff gaining new experiences through an actual physical exchange. This, in the context of COVID-19, I think is going to have a significant impact, obviously, on the student experience, but also, I think, on the experience of different teaching and learning practices across different countries. And I think we're going to have to look at how we can actually develop, if you like, a blended approach to Erasmus Plus going forward, where we, can still keep the interaction to a certain extent, but to do it in the way that Terry described, which is different from just seeing the heads on the screen. How do you get greater interaction and a more novel form of interaction in terms of teaching practice?
Thank you. I have another question here for Terry. So what are the pathways to build in order to achieve a situation where policy informs practice and practice informs policy, as you described happened in Ireland? I'm sure Rory will be able to comment on this after you.
Okay, so if I can give a quick example. One of the quick examples is that we decided there was a policy initiative around access and participation for students. And out of that discourse came about retention of students and things like that. So we did an evidence-based piece of work, an enhancement theme called Teaching for Transitions, that looked at why students stay, why students leave, and really investigated that. We went back to the policymakers and we said, look, this is what we found. We know a lot about why students leave, but we don't know a lot about why students succeed. So we need to focus on student success rather than just keeping our students in regardless of whether they do it. So what's happened is that we've worked in partnership with our policy, and the policy is now shifted its discourse from one of retention to one of student success. And we now have an agreed national understanding of success, which we went out and got the sector to actually collaborate on. We got them to own it. So that national understanding of success now is owned by policy, it's owned by the sector. And now institutions are being asked to develop policies around student success. But for the first time, we've got the two of them lined up, knowing exactly what they're talking about, all on the same way, moving forward in the same direction. And that's what change is about. It can't happen if the policy doesn't change, and it can't happen if the institution doesn't change. It needs both of them to go together. And that's where our role is. We kind of are in the middle there, bringing those kind of things and making those happen.
And I suppose next from access to success comes progression eventually as well.
Well, we had retention and progression, and access is important, but it's not sufficient.
Absolutely not, no. So I also have a question here about, are there any concrete institutions who use EDUCAUSE's digital transformation framework model? And that could be a yes or a no there.
I haven't got to the stage where I've analysed that or we've analysed that. I know people are using it as a reference point, but
less than, more of a reference.
How much they're using it, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that blended learning, distance learning will keep the partially, or at least partially keep the momentum after the pandemic?
Never waste a crisis. Definitely. Definitely. It has to.
I was wondering on this.
Yeah.
How you might, sorry Laura, just it's the same question here, but how you might disentangle your future policy approaches from the ones that are necessary in a moment of crisis, i.e. making sure that the future is not just driven by being COVID proof, but is, it's not COVID led. It's just about making sure that we can cover everything.
Well, I think I'll just make the comment and just go back to my last slide. The comment here, and I agree with Terry, every crisis represents an opportunity. That's the simple reality. And for us, obviously, improving, if the COVID pandemic has resulted in improved teaching practice and a better experience for our students, that's a wonderful thing to have. But also from my perspective in the policy scene, if it helps improve other aspects of education, in particular, I'm thinking lifelong learning and participation in that, and then that's an opportunity we need to follow up, and it's something we need to engage in. So I think absolutely we will see the positive side of it. I don't think we want this to be seen as just a reactionary thing that was done for 6 months and then, oh, that problem went away, let's move on to the next problem. No, this should be built into our strategic planning from here on in terms of teaching and learning practice, in terms of the development of our staff, in terms of the experience of our students, and also in dealing with other issues that we need to address at a national level that we talked about earlier. Excuse me.
Laura, you wanted to add something on that?
Yeah, as for Hungary, also the institutions and the policy field is preparing for the so-called hybrid education. And I think that it's fantastic that we can create the opportunity to have a free choice. How would you like to start the academic year? And not just like because of the COVID-19, but in regular conditions as well. And I think it's a great advancement.
Mm-hmm. So we have one more question then on the live Q&A, which is, could you describe the benefits of distance learning for adults and what would the best scenario look like? I'm guessing Terry might be able to say something on this.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that the data so far that we've collected around students are telling us very clearly that our part-time and our mature learners do not want to go back to the day-to-day face-to-face. And they want this flexibility. They want to be able to learn when they want, when they can. They want to be able to fit it into their own life. So I think that for what good online learning looks like for them is that it gives them choices, it gives them flexibility. When it gives them opportunity for synchronous to develop that sense of belonging within in the online environments, and those opportunities should be high quality interactions. That's where we should put our focus. Really high quality interactions. When we bring people in, let's not waste their time. If there's something that they can look at home on their screen, that's fine. But it's the focus. Good quality online is actually focusing on maybe not even large numbers, but small numbers of really high quality interactions to build a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, to be able to really engage our students and our learners.
And sorry, Laura, please go ahead.
If I just may add that I think that it's adult online learning is going to make lifelong learning a reality. And so because it's not too difficult, now we know how to do. We have to save the budget for that to support institutions to provide online adult learning courses. And then I think it's going to work. And we are preparing for that in the future in Hungary.
Thank you, Christina.
The proper recognition, yes, it's very important of these courses, these online courses.
Yes, so to ensure that recognition, coming back to the issue of quality as well, quality and recognition. We have one more question in the chat. This is for all panelists. Do you expect that lecturers looking for digital content to include in their courses will do their shopping at the big providers of MOOCs such as edX and Coursera? They offer high quality courses after all.
I can give Ben an answer there straight away. I think edX and Coursera have actually got ahead of our lecturing staff, and they're already engaging with higher education institutions at a sectoral level among a number of countries, and they actually had a very, very strong, I think, advertisement campaign, both organizations in the recent months. So I think, yes, that is a situation, but I suppose the question here would be, what will our quality assurance agencies think of that? Because obviously there are certain rules around the development of programs and courses within different jurisdictions.
Are there any other comments there from any of the other panelists? Terry, please.
One of the other approaches that we've taken here in Ireland is that we've been working hard with the sector to get them to understand around what it means to work open, to understand copyright, to understand that. And everything that certainly the Forum has funded over the last number of years has to be produced under Creative Commons license. So we do a lot of work with that. And I think that what we're seeing is, as that capacity is building, that there's more repurposing of context-specific materials, and that's enabled through the Creative Commons licensing and that capacity building we've done. So I think there's a great, hopefully, there'll be a lot of work done in our context around that sharing because of what's already in place.
Yeah, and Laura, you wanted to come in.
That's actually, it's already happening in Hungary, because we have a digital library, a national digital library, and it turned out from the student survey that the majority of the students use that library during the COVID-19, and also teachers use the library. So it's a reality again. It's not just a plan.
Well, thank you very much to everyone who's joined today's seminar. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I think that some of the main takeaways here are about not wasting a crisis, and also ensuring quality as we go forward. And of course, that link between the policy level and the practical implementation of changes is crucial. If you would like us to pass on any more questions to the speakers, please send them to us at info@heinnovate.eu. And if you have any additional questions for the HE Innovate team, you can contact us or reach us through the website, Twitter and LinkedIn. So in addition, we will take away the key points from the discussion and make it available as a short article on the website. Unfortunately, we are now going to take a break from webinars for the summer period, and we'll welcome you back in the autumn with a brand new programme of events. So please do keep a look at the website, and we will keep you posted. And as a reminder, around the European Commission DG Education and Culture having launched the open public consultation today on Digital Education Action Plan, this will stay open until the 4th of December, and they welcome you to participate in the consultation, and the link was posted earlier on in the chat. So on behalf of the HE Innovate team, thank you once again for your time. Thank you, speakers, for your really interesting presentations and discussions, and we look forward to seeing you again, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye, everyone.